Meeting of the TV Toastmasters will come to order. This is December and it will be shown in January, but we're in a good Christmas mood. So we will get started, and our Toastmaster of the day is Joe Schwerling. Joe Schwerling is, we call him Mr. Toastmaster because he is involved in, devotes most of his life to Toastmasters and is involved in 7 different groups as their secretary, treasurer, area governor, or some form. So let us welcome Joe Schwerling, advanced Toastmaster Braun, and a competent leader. Joe Schwerling.
Thank you, Carol. Welcome everyone to this morning's meeting. Hope everyone has had a nice Christmas by now. Happy New Year. And actually the first order of business is the word power. So I'd like to reintroduce Carol Carmeling for word power. Carol.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Our word for today is jovial, because we should be gay, merry, joyous, jolly, good-humored at this time of year. And to use it in a sentence, the planet Jupiter was believed to make those born under it of a jovial temperament. So it is an adjective. Mr. Toastmaster, jovial.
Thank you, Carol. Everyone is instructed to be jovial for the rest of the meeting and the rest of today. Next order of business is Joke Master. And for that, we have Nellye Bowen, competent leader. Nellye.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Well, we're getting ready for Christmas, but mine is the day after Christmas. 'Twas the day after Christmas, and all through the house, every creature was hurting, even the mouse. The toys were all broken, their batteries dead. Santa passed out with some ice on his head. Wrapping and ribbons just covered the floor, while upstairs the family continued to snore. And I, in my t-shirt, new Reeboks and jeans, went into the kitchen and started to clean. When out on the lawn there rose such a clatter, I sprang from the sink to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the curtains, and threw up the sash. When what to my wondering eyes should appear but a little white truck with an oversized mirror. The driver was smiling, so lively and grand, jovial. The patch on his jacket said, U.S. Postman. With a handful of bills, he grinned like a fox. Then quickly he stuffed them in my mailbox. Bill after bill after bill they came. Whistling and shouting, he called them a name. Now Dillard's, now Broadway's, now Penny's and Sears, now Levitz's and Target's and Merwin's, they're all here. To the tip of your limit, every store, every mall. Now charge away, charge away, charge away all. He whooped and he whistled as he finished his work. He filled up the box, then turned with a jerk. He sprang to his truck and he drove down the road, driving much faster with just half a load. Then I heard him exclaim with great holiday cheer, enjoy what you got, you'll be paying for it all year. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Nellye. Many words about coping with the New Year's returns from the Christmas shopping. I've recently thought of a solution to both the Postal Service's problems, and it would probably make the mail recipients more jovial as well. Cut the mail delivery to every other day. Got 6 days of mail delivery every week, so make it 3 days every other day for residential consumers, and everybody'd have one bill-free mail day. every other day. Next, I would like to call on Sheila Mudd Baker, Advanced Toastmaster Bronze, to lead the Tabletopics session. Please welcome Tabletopics Master Sheila.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. This show broadcasts in January, and January is a time where we all think very, very hard about our lives and how we want to change them. So I'm going to call on Carol Carmelink to tell us what her New Year's resolutions would be. Carol?
Madam Tabletopics members, Madam Tabletopics Master, fellow Toastmasters, and our most welcome guests at home. My New Year's resolution is that I do not make resolutions because they last about one day. But I do try to have one thing that will be better next year than it was the past year. And because I know how important exercising is, and I'm not exercising, yet I want to be healthy. And if you don't do something towards your goal, then you will never reach your goal. So I have signed up with a personal trainer that I thought, well, if I won't do it myself, Oprah had a personal trainer that made her do it. So I will go see what this personal trainer is and see what he tells me so that I will be in better shape next year than I was this year. Madam Tabletopics Master.
Thank you. January, February, March, it's winter, and we have a lot of interesting views of winter as a group in the Cincinnati area. People complain because it's too cold. People complain because it's too warm. People complain because it's too gray. Some people complain because it's too snowy. Well, instead of complaining, I want to know, Nellye, what is your favorite memory of January in Cincinnati? Your favorite memory of January in Cincinnati?
Thank you, Madam Tabletopics Master. My favorite would be, I have been fortunate to get 2 jobs in January. In insurance, that is when the year is starting up again, and one of them was a job that I developed myself and convinced the company that they needed somebody doing this. I was an insurance broker, but I didn't like selling the policies like I did making contact with the people and setting the appointments. So I convinced one of the agencies in Cincinnati to let me do this for them because I knew it was going to work. It did. But the most wonderful part was that the man who hired me, my partner, because we worked in partnership, is still a friend of mine. After all these years, we're still in touch. And when I'm downtown, I'll stop in and see him. So the best part of that January was making a friend. And there's nothing more important than making a friend.
January for Americans is always the beginning of the year. What if this was the last year of your life and it's the beginning right now and you know you're only going to live 1 year healthfully, very healthfully, but you're going to be dead at the end of the year? What are you going to do this year, Joe Schwerling?
Madam Tabletopics Master, fellow Toastmasters. Those that know me are aware that I've accumulated a massive amount of stuff. I've got more stuff and duplicate and triplicate stuff than anyone I know. Tools and unfinished projects and lifetime of every type of orange apparel that can be imagined. My twin sister's greatest fear that she has expressed to me and my mother before her, before she died, was that something would happen to me and they would be faced with having to dispose of, manage my accumulation of stuff. So although I would probably try to work in some unusual trips, like a cruise or two to exotic places or something like that, I would feel my responsibility also to try to wind up my financial and material affairs to the best extent possible so that they wouldn't be burdened thereafter. Although a little bit of loss would be incurred by the rapid disposition of property, I've also thought that the resultant donations of construction materials, say to Habitat for Humanity, the orange apparel to those in need, or start a new organization of orange people, would similarly benefit others, and with the resulting estate helping to fund my niece's upcoming college education and my twin sister's exorbitant expenditures, although they do help to make her more jovial. Madam Topic Master.
Thank you, Joe. Well, we had 3 interesting views of January resolutions with Carol, her favorite January with Nellye, and the last year of his life, and he's getting ready to clean out his closets in January, Joe Schwerling. And that's it for Tabletopics this time. Let's introduce or reintroduce our Toastmaster, Joe Schwerling.
Thank you, Sheila. Our next presentation will be a speech by Jermone Mannigan. So before commencement of his presentation, I'd like to introduce Nellye Bowen as his evaluator to explain the objectives of this particular manual speech. Nellye?
Jerome's speech is an editorial, and which is different from your usual speeches, and the objectives are to understand the dynamics of a television interview or talk show, to prepare for, no, wait a minute. They're going to have to take this one out and let me start over. Okay, edit it out. We're starting over.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. The objectives to effectively present an opinion or viewpoint in a short time, to simulate giving a presentation as part of a television broadcast, and of course this isn't a simulation, this is an actual broadcast, and the time is 3 minutes plus or minus 30 seconds. Jermone Mannigan, and the title of his speech is The Birth of Christ and Transformation Change. Jermone Mannigan.
Doesn't Joe he had an introduction there.
You can go ahead and give the introduction as I'm
Yes.
going over to the table. That's fine.
Jermone Mannigan has served as president of the Cincinnati Toastmasters Club, number 472, one of the oldest clubs in Cincinnati. He's currently Area 57 governor and is a competent Toastmaster, advanced Toastmaster bronze, and competent leader. Today he's giving speech number 1 from the Communicating on Television Advanced Manual. His editorial is titled The Birth of Christ and Transformation Change.
I'm Jermone Mannigan, and I would like to share some thoughts with you about the birth of Christ and transformational change. Take a moment to pause and to reflect with me about the birth of Christ and transformational change. Let us use this as an opportunity to reflect about how we too can participate in this wonderful experience. The central and eternal message of Christianity is the birth, the ever-occurring birth of the Christ child. You question the idea of the ever-occurring birth of the Christ child? Let me suggest to you that the birth of Christ is not confined to a time of year, nor is it an isolated event in history. Rather, Christ is born each and every day into the hearts and minds of people everywhere who are open, receptive, and willing to receive the good news heralded by his coming. And what is the good news that the Christ child brings? Simply stated, truth. The liberating truth that all men and women are created in the image and likeness of God, and that each of us is the beloved of God. I believe that in order to receive or to personally experience the birth of the Christ child, we must first experience a transformational change. What is transformational change? How and when does serious transformational change occur? What is its impetus? How does it present itself? When do we know that real transformational change has occurred? Transformational change is core level change. It is a change in the way we do things, the way we talk, the way we see and think about ourselves and others. It is honest, sincere, and genuine. It is a change brought about by understanding that our accustomed way of doing things is no longer satisfying, purposeful, or fulfilling. It is a deep realization that what we have been doing previously, if continued, can only lead to more of the same. Transformational change, because of what it involves and requires, can be and usually is very painful, but it is a necessary pain. It is the pain we encounter as we move from where we are to where we know we can and ought to be as individuals who are created in the image and likeness of God. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerome, for your very thoughtful editorial today, and particularly appropriate for this time of year. Our next presentation will be Steve Ahrenholz, and his evaluator is Carol Carmelink. So I'd like to introduce Carol Carmelink to present Steve's objectives for this presentation. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and our most honored guests at home. Steve is speaking from the Advanced Manual Storytelling. His speech is project number 1, The Folk Tale, and Steve's objectives are to tell a folk tale that is entertaining and enjoyable for a specific age group, to use vivid imagery and voice to enhance the tale. And he has 7 to 9 minutes, and he will gather us in a circle and tell us a story. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Carol. And so our next presentation will be Steve Ahrenholz. bench Toastmaster bronze and competent leader. Steve has been a Toastmaster for a number of years and has also served as an area governor and competed in a number of contests. So please welcome Steve Ahrenholz with the cobbler and the Christmas guest. Welcome, Steve.
A lot like what it's like to do a one-woman TV show.
Yeah. Okay.
So we already welcomed you.
So we're ready.
There once lived in the city of Marseille an old cobbler. But he was honored and revered by all of his neighbors, who affectionately referred to him as Father Martin. One Christmas Eve, Father Martin, or Martin, was reading a story about the visit of the Magi to the infant Christ child and the various gifts that they brought to the infant. He thought to himself, if Christmas were tomorrow and Christ was born in Marseille, what gift would I give him? He thought for a moment, and then he arose from his stool and, reaching to an overhead shelf, took down a pair of small, snow-soft, white leather shoes with bright silver buckles on them. He said to himself, I know I would give him these, my finest work. He carefully replaced the shoes back on the shelf, and as he extinguished the candle, he got up and was ready to retire for the evening. He had hardly closed his eyes when it seemed that there was a voice that spoke to him. It said, Martin, I know that you would like to meet me. Tomorrow, if you watch through your window, I will be passing by. If you bid me to come in, I will sit at your table, and you'll have an opportunity to meet me. Well, Martin wasn't sure what to think. I mean, he sensed this presence. It wasn't something that was frightening, but he was also filled with joy. He could hardly sleep, and the next morning, way before dawn, he was awakened. He was straightening up his little shop. He put fresh sand on the floor. He got pine boughs and wove those through the rafters in his humble little shop. He put his best linen tablecloth on his table and set on the table, this spotless linen tablecloth, a fresh loaf of bread, a jar of honey, a pitcher of milk, and he put a pot of tea over the fire. He then sat by the window, taking up his vigil to watch for the guest. He'd been sitting there for a little while, and he saw an old street sweeper walking by outside, and he was rubbing his gnarled, thin hands, blowing on them, trying to keep warm. Martin thought, that man is half frozen. He went to the door, opened it up, and said, you, come in, warm yourself by my fire, have a cup of tea. And the old street sweeper gladly accepted his offer. After the street sweeper had spent a little while warming himself in Martin's shop, he bid him farewell, and Martin resumed his watch by the window, his vigil for the guest. A little time passed, and he noticed a very shabbily dressed young woman carrying an infant in her arms. She paused to rest in the shelter of his doorway. Her face was drawn. Martin was touched by her appearance and her struggles with the cold winter winds, He threw open the door and said, "Please come in and warm yourself by my fire and have something to eat." And the woman with her infant son came in, and he said, "Have something to eat." And the woman was not sure she really wanted something to eat. And he asked her, he said, "You look so fragile, so frail, and I noticed that you had a hard time even walking." The woman replied to Martin, "Well, I'm sick and I'm on my way to the hospital, and I'm hoping that they'll take me in. And my son as well. My husband is at sea, and I have no one else here to help me." Martin was touched by her situation, and he said, "Well, at least let me give the little one a cup of milk." And as he was pouring the milk for this woman's infant son, he noticed that the child had no shoes on its feet. And he said to the woman, "You don't even have any shoes on the little one's feet, but I have some that will work." Martin went over to the shelf and took down the shoes, the snow-white, soft leather shoes that he had been admiring the night before. He said to the woman, "I'll give him these shoes. These are my finest work." He put the shoes on the infant's feet, and they fit perfectly. After giving the child a cup of milk and the mother warmed herself, she bid him farewell, carrying the shoes in her hand for her son, and tearfully thanked Martin for all of his hospitality. Martin went back to his window, continued to watch throughout the day. There were a host of people that came by, and he repeatedly invited them to come in and warm themselves by his fire, offering them tea and other things that helped make their passage through the day a little bit easier. As dusk fell, Martin became a bit disappointed because he thought to himself, "I did not believe hard enough. He has not come." The guest that Martin was expecting to see pass by his window that he could invite in had not appeared. Dusk was falling on the town, and it was starting to get a little bit darker in Martin's shop. His eyes were weary because he'd been up early, and it appeared to him that there was a warm light that appeared within his little shop. And then one by one, all of the people who had come through his doorway that day and had sat at his table and had taken comfort by his fire said to him one at a time, "Did you not invite me in, and I sat at your table?" And then they would vanish with a smile. And Martin thought, "Yes, but the guest that I was expecting was not here." And then the voice that he had heard the night before spoke to him and said, "Do you not know that whatsoever you have done to the least of these? I was hungry and you gave me food. I was naked and you clothed me. Whatever you have done to the least of these, you have done to me." Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Very interesting presentation, as yours always are. We will now begin with the evaluation section of the meeting, where we have the feedback both for the speakers to learn from their presentations the things they've done well and receive suggestions for improvement, as well as for the other Toastmasters to learn by the overall experience and feedback. So for our first speaker, Jermone Mannigan, The evaluator is Nellye Bowen. Please welcome Nellye for Jerome's evaluation.
Thank you. Well, Jerome, I enjoyed your speech very much. Was the news event our current issue in which the editorial was based? What was it? It was based on the birth of Christ. And what reaction did the speaker have toward the news event or issue, and was it clearly presented? Yes, the birth of Christ, you told us, occurs in each of us each day. It changes the way we see ourselves and the way we react to the world. Did the speaker show sound logic and reasoning in explaining his viewpoint? Yes, I thought you did very much so. And were the words carefully chosen, short, and clearly pronounced? Yes, the words were short, simple, easily understood. He was very articulate. And were you convincing to the television camera? Yes, you spoke to the camera, which we have difficulty with sometimes, because in regular Toastmasters, we're taught to go left, middle, and right, and on television, you're supposed to look directly toward the camera, and you did that. And was your appearance appropriate? Yes, you looked very professional. And how effective did you feel the editorial would have been if it had been broadcast? Well, it was broadcast. I felt it was very effective. The only thing I would suggest at the end, I would have liked for you to make it a little bit personal by asking us, how has the birth of Christ affected you? And I think it's affected each one of us, very much so, and especially so if you're a Christian. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Nellye. For our next evaluation of Steve Ahrenholz's speech, I'd like to introduce, please welcome Carol Cormelink for Steve's evaluation. Welcome, Carol.
Mr. Toastmaster and fellow Toastmasters, and especially Steve. I liked your story, Steve. I especially liked the way you had such effective pauses when you said he was by the window and then you paused to watch for guests. It was easy to follow your story. I was interested in it. I thought you did very well. You had a well-paced delivery. You didn't lose me any time. I liked the story was to have a minimum amount of characters. You had the two main characters and then the passers-by. I liked your descriptive phrases of the gift of the snow white soft leather shoes with silver buckles. I could picture them in my mind. And I liked another descriptive phrase was the humble little shop and the man that had the gnarled thin hands. I thought they were very descriptive. I could picture these. I could visualize them in my mind. The shabbily dressed person, and that they all vanished as they came at the end of the story. They all vanished with a smile after they said, you brought me in. And the idea of the mood, I don't have the specific words I'm trying to find on the mood, but I would say it would be something about an attitude of appreciation and being able to do for others, that we are able to do for others, and we should when we can. I think the mother and child was probably one of the parts of the story that was the most impressive for me, and I thought you had a very excellent summation at the end. I thought it was rather abrupt because I was not sure if you were finished. So I don't know how to say that what you could have done, that I realized that was the end, but because I was sort of sitting waiting for more. But overall, I thought you had a great story, and I was very impressed that you didn't have to read it, that you knew it all. You didn't have notes. So being a note person, I really appreciated your story. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Carol. And thank you both for your very insightful evaluations. And again, to the speakers for the preparation and the quality of the presentations that we've had today. At this point, I'd like to call on our timer for our timer's report date. Please welcome Sheila.
have discovered that I am not necessarily the perfect timer today because I forgot to time Carol Cormelink in word power, but I remembered that the word was jovial. And I forgot to measure the time for the joke, but I'm glad I got a chance to listen to the joke word for word. I was so entranced by the poem that I forgot. But very importantly, in Tabletopics, we had 3 participants. Carol Cormelink, who spoke exactly 1 minute, which was just enough to give her qualification to have the proper time. Nellye Bowen, who had 1 minute and 4 seconds, so she was within the time. And Joe Schwerling, 2 minutes and 23 seconds, which was within time. Remember, the Tabletopics is 1 to 2 minutes. With the scheduled speakers, the participants were Jermone, Mannigan, and Steve Ahrenholz. And Jermone Mannigan had a 2 to 3 minute time with a deviation of 30 seconds. That is, he had to speak no less than 2 minutes and no more than 3 minutes and 30 seconds, and he spoke in 3 minutes and 13 seconds. Steve Ahrenholz had 7 minutes minimum, 9 minutes and 30 seconds maximum, and he spoke at 8 minutes and 26 seconds. The evaluators, Nellye Bowen for Jermone Mannigan, spoke 1 minute and 33 seconds. So she was a little short of time because she should have spoken at least 2 minutes. Carol Cormelink spoke 2 minutes and 4 seconds, so she made the time. And that is it, because I think I'm already over my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. And again, thank you, Sheila, for your efforts today as well. And thank you all for being here and participating today. And to the audience, I encourage to look into the more than 24 Toastmasters clubs that are throughout the greater Cincinnati area that can be located either from Toastmasters in the white pages or from Toastmasters website, toastmasters.org. And now I'd like to welcome back the presiding officer of TV Toastmasters, Carol Cormelink.
Thank you, Joe, for a job well done and your jovial attitude up here. That was good. I would like to thank everyone for coming today. I thought we had a great meeting, and I will look forward to our president returning. He is right now out in Seattle having Christmas with his family out there. So we will be having our next meeting will be Monday, January the 6th at the Kenwood Good Shepherd Lutheran Church at 6:30. And we welcome anyone who would like to come as a guest and visit our meeting. And I will now adjourn the meeting of the TV Toastmasters for December 21st.